Hello and welcome back to Bitesize Boxing. Today we're going to very quickly go over the Ben Whittaker versus Briain Suarez fight that took place on Saturday night. Was going to cover this one yesterday but was a bit under the weather, so thought I'd just fill you guys in on Monday evening. So let's talk about it. Now, as far as how the fight went, I'll be honest, I'm not that surprised. In my pre-fight I did say that I expected Ben Whittaker to get rid of Briain Suarez without too much trouble. Someone did actually leave a comment and say, what's your prediction? And I said, I think I said easily within inside 5 rounds, something like that. But as I said in my pre-fight, if this fight goes early, I wasn't going to be too surprised, and I kind of got what I expected. I did get a bit of pushback because some people said, oh, no, Briain Suarez can punch, don't write this guy off. But I said in my pre-fight, this guy's trash. This guy isn't that good. He gave Lyndon Arthur a decent-ish fight, but he ended up getting stopped by Lyndon Arthur, who's not a particularly prolific puncher at all. And again, this guy's been stopped early on a whole bunch of occasions as well before, so I knew that this guy was no great shakes. I've seen Briain Suarez enough times to know that. Yes, he can punch a little bit, but at what level? And so, again, this was just an opponent who was made to order for Ben Whittaker. He's basic, he's slow, he was going to go in there with, little head movement and just get taken out, and that's exactly what happened. So, as far as the fight goes, if I'd sat here on my pre-fight and I said, look, Briain Suarez, he's one to watch, he's a hard puncher, he's going to give Ben Whittaker problems, that would have been one thing, but I never said that. I said on my pre-fight, yeah, this guy ain't really any good, and we saw exactly what we saw. So I got exactly what I expected from this fight. As I said in my pre-fight there, and as I'll reiterate again, just step this guy up. If this guy is everything we're told he is, as I say, the guy's pushing 30 now, he's 28 years old, Olympic silver medalist, great amateur background and all the rest of it, very clearly talented, you can step this guy up now. I'm talking Willie Hutchinson, Joshua Boatsi, Anthony Yard, even a Craig Richards, someone like that. I'm not asking for the world here. I don't think saying, Craig Richards or Willie Hutchinson, I don't think that, I'm not saying throw him in with Bivol. I'm not saying throw him in there with Beterbiev. But I'm saying, if this guy's as good as we're told he is, you can step him up now. You can put him through these fights. I guarantee you, because they're already talking about getting him out in America soon, it'll be another trash fighter in America. And then maybe when he fights again in the UK, it might be someone a little bit better, but not great. Maybe a Zach Parker if they're feeling adventurous. Then maybe, just maybe at the end of the year we'll get someone of that ilk. Maybe a Dan Aziz or someone like that who's a bit more on the back end than someone like, Anthony Yard or someone like that. And look, Anthony Yard I think's past his best, as is Joshua Boatsi. But again, I don't think they'll take that risk, maybe even this year. And as I said in my pre-fight, why? I reiterate, I truly do believe they're hiding something with Ben Whittaker. That doesn't mean that I don't think he's necessarily talented enough to pick up a vacant belt or something at some point, because I think he probably is, to be honest. The talent jumps out at you. There's a reason this guy's an Olympic silver medalist, but the intangibles are something I constantly come back to with this guy. What's his heart like? What's his chin like? What's his engine like? The only time we saw that even slightly tested in that first Liam Cameron fight, the answers didn't look good to me. And I don't think they look good to you guys either. So, as I said, this Ben Whittaker, again, if this guy's as good as they're saying he is, if he is this precocious talent, you wouldn't match him like this. You would match him like this if you're not quite sure what you got, or he's not quite sure and he's not as confident as he makes out, and he's trying to maximize as much money, build a profile, but without taking risk. That's what it looks like to me. As I say, you take a fighter the traditional route and you step them up a certain way. You don't take them, weird, ambiguous opponents like they've been doing, where you're going to go in there and you're going to get rid of them and you're not going to get tested because they're just not on your level. We've already seen this. And again, as I said before, Briain Suarez was a step up on paper, but as I said, I knew this guy was no good. So I'm not massively surprised by what I've seen out there. If you'd said, what's the chances of, Ben Whittaker going in there and icing this guy in a round, I would have said, yeah, I think it's perfectly feasible. So I'm not really surprised by what I've seen, but you let me know what you think, because maybe some people think I'm a bit harsh on Ben Whittaker, and the reason I'm harsh is because clearly the guy's talented. I'm not sat here saying I think Ben Whittaker's absolute trash. If I thought that, then I would have no problem with these kind of opponents. Clearly, I think the guy has got good talent, but why aren't you stepping this guy? Why aren't you fighting, again, someone like a Willie Hutchinson by now? You can be fast-tracked. You're no spring chicken. You've got all the pedigree in the world for it. So I don't see why you're not taking that kind of chance. Again, Willie Hutchinson, decent outboxer, but not a big puncher. He's been knocked out at super middleweight. So, this isn't a guy who is anything to be scared of, and yet you're not even calling these guys names. Why aren't you? Again, is it because you're worried that these guys might be able to test your internal fortitude and take you somewhere that you don't want to go? They're the questions that I start asking myself, because it doesn't make any sense otherwise. I'm not saying you have to rush this guy, but as I said before, he's no spring chicken. He's got all of the Olympic and amateur pedigree. You can step this guy up quite quickly. You don't have to wrap him in cotton wool the way they are. And the way that he's being moved, as I say, it's like a fighter who's being protected for a certain reason. And I have no doubt that at some point we will find out what that reason is. But as I say, the guy's very talented. Ben Whittaker did what he was supposed to do, but still, more questions than answers for me for Ben Whittaker. And I'm sure, in due course, over the next few years, over his career, we'll see those questions answered. You let me know what you think. I'd be interested to know. Take it easy, guys. Cheers.